Hey everyone, welcome to Film Rush. This is a weekly podcast where two cousins get together and talk about movies. My name is Logan Vaughn, and joining me today is my cousin John.
Hey everyone, I'm John Vaughn. Thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Welcome to Film Rush.
It's another official episode of Film Rush Podcast. We're back, and it has been a while since we've been here. Sorry for the delay, everyone. We hope you didn't miss us too much. We missed you. Logan, didn't we miss the audience? Didn't we miss talking about movies on this show?
Yeah, it's been weird to take a couple of weeks off, because last week I recorded my review of The Invisible Man, and the week before that, John had his, oh crap. I'm trying to remember what was it that you posted?
Kubo and the Two Strings.
That's right. I was like, I think it's something animated, but I can't remember what it is. Kubo and the Two Strings. And then I think it was the week before that was the last time that we were actually together, you and I, in the same virtual room.
Yep, together in spirit and in computer.
It's been a while.
It has been a while, but it's good to be back. I promised everyone that we would be back, so I figured breaking that would be a no-go for a show like this. So, hey, we're here for another podcast episode, so we're going to dive right into movies. I think since, you've got two recommends, I've got a recommend and avoid, let's just jump into one of your recommends, Logan. So what's one of them that you think is worth viewing?
Let's go. So we're here in early October, so I'm thinking I got to lead off with something kind of spooky. So I want to recommend a horror movie called The Possession. I saw this movie a long time ago. This came out in 2012. This came out the year that John and I graduated high school. And I remember seeing it way back in the day. And it legit creeps me out because this movie is based on a weird little box that contains an ancient demon. And, of course, a little girl gets her hands on the box and she opens the box and she gets possessed by the demon, and it's spooky and scary and all that. But the box, it's a real thing in real life, and you can go online and you can read about all the different people over the years who have held possession of this box, and the different stories that they have and experiences they have based on that. Even if none of it's true, it's still a really good time. The movie itself is not of the highest quality by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a decent, solid, possession type horror movie. And this one's just old enough that you may have missed it, or you may have only seen it once. I do think it is worth the rewatch. Jacqueline had a pretty good time watching this for the first time a few weeks back. It was just spooky enough that it got her, but not so spooky that we had to talk about it for a couple of nights or anything. You know what I mean? Not great reviews. It's got a 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think, and a 5.
Most horror films don't do very well against critics.
You're right.
Even ones that are usually liked by people, you look on the critics, they're it's a 40%. It's what pleases you? What makes you happy?
Yes, it's kind of one of those you're either going to be above 90 or below 60 kind of situations. But yeah, we're at a 39% Rotten Tomatoes score with a 48% audience score. So this is one of those rare occasions where I'm going to take a movie that's got bad Rotten Tomatoes score and actually say something positive about it. But I dug this movie. Again, I don't think it's the greatest by any stretch of the imagination, but there are a few really cool things about it. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, for example, is in the lead role. And there's just a lot of really creepy imagery in this movie. One scene in particular, once everything is actually going down, the big climax of the scene, when the spookiness is full spook, there's a really creepy scene where the girl is in full possession mode and is running around like a hospital and the lights are flashing, and it's all in the trailer and stuff, but it's so well done, that one scene at least, that the rest of the movie is worth it really just to get to the major possession at the end. But I don't know, man, there's just something about this movie that kind of got under my skin, and I've seen it maybe 4 or 5 times now over the years, so I would recommend checking out The Possession. I don't remember where I watched it, though. That's probably helpful to know.
Where do I find this?
I think it was on Amazon, maybe, or Netflix.
I'm not sure. I have never seen this particular horror film. Like, I'm not really a horror film guy. I do have a film in the lineup today to talk about that's under the horror genre, according to Netflix. As far as what people think about this film, when we get to it, we'll discuss. But it is October, and we're probably going to be talking about more spooky movies than usual. So for the audience, that's a bit of a tip-off for what we're going to be doing this month. But did you figure out where that movie is listed yet?
Yeah, it's free to watch over on Amazon Prime.
Cool. So Amazon Prime is where you find it. We've probably need to be better about, honestly, telling people where to find these movies, because I have noticed we've both been bad. We'll say, like, a movie, and then I won't clarify where the hell to watch it. And so,
right.
If, there's 1,000 streaming services out there, and the whole shtick of this show is we're going to tell you where to find them and what streaming service, and we review streaming specifically. So, all right, so that's on Amazon Prime. Cool. Mine that I'm going to be talking about, my recommend, and then we'll get to my avoid, which is that horror film I mentioned. My recommend is on Netflix. We'll get that out of the way first. And it is Troy.
Oh, yeah.
This is the Brad Pitt and... oh, boy. What's his name? He plays Hector.
Eric Bana?
Yeah, Eric Bana. Woo! My brain almost got to Banda. And then it went to, like, some other realm. But yeah, Eric Bana. Classic
The guy
film.
from the Hulk in that time-traveling love movie.
The guy who's the Hulk in the movie that everyone hates. Unfortunately, because Eric Bana probably would have made, honestly, a really good Hulk / Bruce Banner, to be honest. But, yeah, Troy. So this movie on Netflix is like 2 hours and 46 minutes long. It's considered an epic in that form alone. That is its theatrical release. That's its typical release. I honestly say, totally worth just watching that. I accidentally, as a fan of this film, way back in the before times, before pandemic and college and everything, this is years ago, I bought it on Blu-ray from a used movie store, because I was like, I gotta own this. And I didn't realize I'd bought the director's cut. The director's cut is 3 hours and 16 minutes long.
Oh my god.
I, to this day, as a fan of this movie, still have not gotten through the whole damn thing. It's paced like a snail once you get to the director's cut. It is still pretty slow as its regular release, as 2 hours and 46 minutes long sounds pretty girthy to the layman's ears, but it is worth it, especially if you have a passing interest in Greek stories and Greek mythology. It's a pretty good war film. Granted, it is rated R, so for people who think like, oh, my kid's really into Greek stuff, no. This is an R-rated movie. You see nudity, you got cussing, you got pretty intense violence. It also has Orlando Bloom as an archer again. For some reason, he was typecast as an archer for like a hot second back in the early thousands.
Orlando Bloom was in Troy. I know he's in, what's the other, Kingdom of Heaven?
Yes, he's in Kingdom of Heaven, which I also like, but I'm not sure if that's on streaming services right now. I think it is, actually, but I have not looked. But yes, he is in Troy. He plays Paris, the younger brother to Hector. He's the one that shoots Achilles.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
It's easy to forget because Paris is not remarkable.
That was Orlando Bloom.
Yeah. Paris is not remarkable in this film. And Orlando Bloom, granted, Orlando Bloom was still young, and so his acting wasn't really to par yet, and he wasn't given a whole lot to work with. So his role's kind of but
Can we talk about the fact that, is he married to Katy Perry now, or are they just like engaged or together?
I know they're expecting. I mean,
right.
For tabloid news version of Film Rush, they're expecting.
No, she gave birth a couple of weeks ago, I think, didn't she?
Did she? I don't know. I only remember hearing that they were going to have a kid.
She at least released her album. I know that was a thing.
I don't read People magazine.
Yeah, I don't either.
But
anyway, Orlando Bloom.
Yeah, Troy. Well, I mean, that's it. Like, Troy is good. It's about the I can't remember the specifics, but it's about the invasion of Troy. I don't remember exactly who, in terms of like naming the specific nations and peoples of who attacked Troy and why. I remember it involves like Agamemnon.
It's all about the girl, Helen, Diane Kruger. It's all about Helen of Troy because she's with Hector.
She goes with Paris,
but
she runs away with Paris, away from her husband. Her husband, being slighted and angry, goes to his brother Agamemnon and goes, let's go burn Troy to the ground because I just got cucked. And so Agamemnon, just wanting an excuse to invade Troy because he's a conqueror, goes, sure, bro, we'll totally do this for your honor, not my power. And they go invade Troy. And Troy would have, according to the film, again, Troy is an interesting story when it comes to actual history and archaeology. Like, I don't know exactly where the film diverges from real history or not, but according to the film, Troy would have stood just fine, except for the Trojan horse, where they hide in a horse and the king and his advisors, in their arrogance, accept the gift of surrender from the opposing army, bring the horse into their city, and fuck themselves. I know this is a lot of spoilers, but this film came out in like 2001 or some shit. I can't remember exactly. 2004. So this is a 16-year-old movie. I think spoilers are allowed.
Listen, if the movie's old enough it can get its own driver's license, then like, come on.
Yeah, I actually watched a thing the other day where two people were asking, like, what is the timeline for allowing spoilers? Like, when are you allowed to just divulge everything? One of them said a month. And I was like, that's a little fast for some movies. I would say, like, within 2 years, definitely, you're allowed to say whatever you want. So, Troy Burns, sorry guys, but I mean, it's an interesting movie. It's good if you have a real big inkling for, like, ancient warfare and Greek mythology and whatnot. And it's pretty cool, in my opinion.
Okay, I got one comment about Troy. Brad Pitt in Troy is one of the most, like, perfect, like, human beings like you'll ever see in, like, any movie ever. He is just full,
he's
like,
oiled up.
Brad
He's got
Pitt
muscles. He's got the
his...
long flowing hair. You know, if I was, actually no, I would do things. I'm not a fully straight man. Brad Pitt in 2004's Troy could have, convinced me to be less than straight.
He could have got it with, like, anyone from any era ever.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, like, Helen, why did you leave with Paris? You should have fucking found Achilles.
I know. I think that's one of the problems with the movies. You get Achilles looking so great that you're like, oh, it's little Orlando Bloom, not, the one you get to know as Legolas, but like the Frodo looking version.
Yeah, if if Frodo was tall,
the pre-Kit Harington type.
Yeah, very Kit Harington. Kit Haring when he was young. Brad Pitt could get it. Brad Pitt could still get it, but in a different way.
Sure. Okay. My other movie is The Prince of Egypt. I was talking to John about this before we were recording, and I have been playing Assassin's Creed Origins a lot over the past 6 weeks or so, and that really got me into, like, an Egypt high, and so I started watching a couple of like movies and documentaries that are Egyptian themed. So this is kind of out of left field here, but The Prince of Egypt is a super, super well done animated movie from 1998. Comes in at an hour and 40 minutes and tells a really well done, I would say, abbreviated animated story type version of Moses and the story of Genesis, Exodus. Not Genesis, but of Exodus. And I was wanted to bring this up for a couple of reasons, and one is I will never get tired of going back to an old beloved childhood animated movie and then looking at the voice cast on IMDb and realizing how many famous people are voicing these beloved childhood characters.
You've got Val Kilmer, Ralph Fiennes,
right?
A bunch of others as well. Those are the two main cast of it. And it's just like, now that I know as an adult, I can totally hear it. But as a kid, you could have told me that Batman was Moses and I wouldn't have believed you for a hot second at all.
Exactly. And that's the thing is I was just blown away knowing that Hotep and Hoy were Steve Martin and Martin Short.
That blew my mind. I didn't actually know that until like last year.
Oh my gosh.
And once because I was watching it with Annabelle for like the millionth time of my life. And I never thought to look up those characters. I'd always looked up every other cast member of that movie. I never thought to look up the two like magician advisor guys. And I just happened to glance at the cast on IMDb and I saw Martin was credited. And I was like,
yep,
who the fuck is he? And then I went deeper and I found out it was those two. I was like, well, I'm sorry, we're not talking about this. Why? It's like, what? Who cast them?
That's how I felt.
Who was the casting director that said these two need to be in this movie?
Yeah.
I mean, it works, but like, why?
It was extremely weird. It was also weird. You've got Helen Mirren as the queen. You've got Patrick Stewart as Seti.
Helen Mirren is a queen.
She is. Like, she's the queen.
Let's face it.
Danny Glover is Jethro. Jeff Goldblum voicing Aaron. I heard it loud and clear, but I never knew that as a kid. Never would have guessed that.
He doesn't have any of his Goldisms in there. That's the thing. Like, he doesn't do any of his Jeffnesses in there. That's why you miss it. But, like, yeah, it is him.
Yup. And then you've got Sandra Bullock, Michelle Pfeiffer, you've got Voldemort, and you've got one of the Batmans in here. Like, it's crazy. I think it's a super fantastic retelling of the biblical story. It's as someone who grew up as a very conservative Christian, this movie was one of my favorites as a little kid. And rewatching it as an adult did not disappoint. I thought there was a lot of really, really heavy subject matter. That's probably a better way to say it. Really heavy subject matter in this movie. Just the death and the slavery and the murder and everything that happens with this story.
It's a beautiful movie too.
It is. Animation,
it still
the
holds
music,
up like crazy. The art style is freaking astonishing.
Yes. For the era that it came out in as well. Just super, super phenomenal. Well done all the way around. I'm trying to remember. I feel like there's a story here with the production of this movie. I want to say, was this one of DreamWorks' first movies?
Yeah, it was the first, I think.
Or am I thinking of... It was something else.
Whatever studio it was, what is it? Prince of Egypt. All I could think was Egypt. Prince of Egypt being DreamWorks, I think you are right. DreamWorks Animation, yes. I believe it was the very first film DreamWorks ever put out. And it was in 1998. And... that's a risky move, even if it's the second or third movie.
Studio now known for How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, Shrek, Trolls, Boss Baby, Madagascar. They're the ones who did the Prince of Egypt.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane.
It's a big dick move.
Insane,
to be honest. Like, because as I said, it's very early on in their existence, and they choose to do a Bible story, and in a way, that kind of makes sense in terms of money, because there's a lot of people who would buy a Bible movie. I mean, obviously people who believe in the Bible, but it's not necessarily a worldwide market in some regards. I mean, it is 1998. It's a different world than it is today, but it's risky in a way, and it worked because, I mean, DreamWorks is still around. They certainly didn't fuck themselves. So I don't know. It's interesting that would be one of their premiere films. When I learned that, I also was shocked.
Yeah, that's I'm completely shocked right along with you. But yeah, that's just I thought this was a really well done movie. It held up so much better than I really thought that it would. So if you love beautifully animated movies with gorgeous moving scores, themes, and characters, then I would go check out The Prince of Egypt, because let's be honest, Egypt is one of the coolest of the ancient cultures, and this is a movie you probably haven't seen in a while, so go check out this movie soon over on Hulu.
So that's the prince has had his day. Now it's time to talk about death. So this is an avoid for me.
Womp womp.
This is the Netflix live-action adaptation, and every anime fan in the world just cringed, of Death Note.
Haha, I've heard about this. I've not seen it.
The reason I'm bringing it up is because it's Spooktober, and for some reason this is listed under horror on Netflix.
Really?
While I'll agree that the Death Note anime is spooky in some regards, and definitely has an edge to it, it is definitely more in terms of just being narratively weighty and sinister, rather than actually being scary at all, which I guess you could say sinister is a form of horror, but I still wouldn't necessarily put it in that category. The live action Death Note can absolutely go fuck itself. There is no reason for this to exist. The casting is absolutely all over the place and complete garbage. No one really knows how to play a real person in this movie. No one is a real person. Granted, anime is real tough to adapt. If you're going to do a live action anime, you got to be real freaking confident that you're going to get it right somehow. But I don't think anyone has yet. I've not seen a official full big production anime to live action adaptation that has worked. It may someday. It used to be that comic book movies were all garbage. So who knows? Maybe someday we'll have like an anime adaptation renaissance and it'll be really good. Right now, don't watch the live action Death Note at all. Do not. Avoid it. In fact, if you can somehow delete it off of your Netflix page, I know you can't, but if you could, just do it. Because it shouldn't be there. It should go away right now. Watch the anime. If you've not seen the anime, watch it. It's actually really short. The Death Note anime, I think, is only like 2 or 3 seasons long, and they're not even really that long of seasons. It's more of a normal show rather than the anime that have like 300 episodes. It's worth it. It's very good. Its storytelling is really precise. It's paced well. It's a cool actual mystery. There's murder. There's intrigue. It's really dark. The art style is really pretty. The voice acting is top notch. Like literally, this is one of the legendary animes. If you ask any anime nerd, what should I watch if I'm watching any anime? You know, it's going to be said in the same breath of like Full Metal Alchemist. Or, depending on who you are, someone might say like One Piece or Naruto or Dragon Ball Z. Those aren't necessarily, those are shonen anime. They're much more fighty, punchy. Death Note's more mystery and spooks, I guess. Just don't watch this. It's bad. Look up on YouTube. There are videos talking about how this is a horrible adaptation. It's just not worth your time. It's not worth your time. You could watch anything else and it would be worth it. So just avoid the live action Death Note.
All right, so I won't even ask you any questions about the live action Death Note. I will ask though, do you happen to know anything about that Akira live action remake that Taika Waititi was rumored to be doing?
I've not heard anything since that rumor.
Okay.
In terms of like any sort of production progress. It's really just kind of. And even then, that one didn't really hold much water. A lot of people said that was just like a wish fulfillment casting in terms of his directing.
Okay.
The anime live action adaptations have not yet gotten to the point where any directors of Taika Waititi's level would even really consider. Unless they're already an anime nerd and it's been a dream of theirs to adapt it, I don't think any big name director like that will ever touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I guess that could make sense.
But I do think that anime that old, like Akira from like the classics of like the 80s and whatnot, those are the ones probably to adapt nowadays, because you could get away with some more adaptation interpretation where you change a few things, you kind of finick with the timeline and stuff, kind of like how Lord of the Rings cuts up characters or lines or moves stuff around.
Sure.
You gotta be free to have those sort of changes from one format to another, specifically anime shows to live action movies. And I think those older anime are ripe for that type of thing. So Akira would be interesting. But something like Death Note, where it's already pretty compressed when it comes to the anime storytelling style. It's really short for anime. Trying to compress it even further into a film with Western sensibilities, I don't think is ever going to play very well until the West kind of grows up and tells stories in a more diverse way than just shooty bang bang for the most part from the West. So I think that we definitely have some growing to do before we get there. But yeah, if Akira ends up getting adapted and Taika Waititi's tied to it, that alone gets my ticket. But I doubt it.
Nice.
So that brings us to shows.
It does.
So that's all the movies for you. We'll bring you some more movies next week. But for now, we're going to get into TV shows. So Logan, I see you have one that I am excited that you have watched. So I'm going to throw it over to you so that we can talk about this one.
So I watched the first couple seasons of this TV show a long time ago. And it has been at least 3 or 4 years since I have watched BBC's Sherlock, but I actually had a conversation with you, John, on Facebook a couple of months ago, where I was posting about like my all-time favorite TV shows, and you commented that my list was missing Sherlock, and I was like, wait a minute, I completely forgot that like Sherlock existed as a show.
It's not talked about much these days.
Right. So it's on Netflix right now. They've been promoting it, and I saw it, and I was like, you know what? I would love to rewatch Sherlock. So I had been rewatching Sherlock. Jacqueline has been watching it with me, and she's watching it for the first time.
Ooh, wish I could do that.
So my personal history with the show, I watched the first 3 seasons like as they came out,
Same.
and I really dug it. I fell off and just didn't finish the 4th season, so I don't know how the show ends. I intend to figure that out. When I do, I want to come back here on the show and report about it. But the main thing really is Jacqueline's perspective. She wasn't like super into it in the first episode. I think it was just kind of one of those like you gotta be in the right mood.
And that first episode, that one's the pink one with the pink lady.
It's
that's the pilot episode, is when they find the lady with the pink suitcase and the pink jacket and whatnot.
Yep.
That is not one of the strongest episodes, admittedly.
Oh gosh, no.
So yeah, that is kind of a rough start if you're coming into it in terms of like, because you and I had the benefit of watching it as it was coming out, so we didn't have anything to scale it to. When you're looking at it as like a 4-season show and you watch the first episode and it doesn't really get you, you're like, man, do I want to commit to 3 more seasons?
Exactly.
So I get that for sure.
Yep. But we stuck with it. Second episode got her a lot more. By the end of the third episode with Moriarty, she was completely hooked.
Oh yeah, Moriarty.
And then season 2, we just finished the Hounds of Baskerville episode. We watched that last night, which is all kinds of Halloween flavors. So yeah, I'm really digging it. It's just as good as I remembered, if not maybe even a little bit better. The cinematography, the writing, the acting, the delivery. The atmosphere of the show, just the manic sense of humor and how often I'm giggling and how rude Sherlock is. It's brilliant. It's a unique, one-of-a-kind show. And if you haven't seen it, it's very intellectually stimulating, and I would encourage checking it out.
It is very good. I will be definitely curious to hear your thoughts on season 4. Season 4.
Have you seen all of it?
Yes, I have watched the entire show multiple times through. So season 4 is the most polarizing season of all the BBC Sherlock fans.
I've heard that.
Episode 1 of season 4 is absolute ass garbage. I despise that episode. So be prepared for that. The rest of the season is not nearly as bad by any means. It's not nearly as good as season 2, which I think it's the best season. But it definitely improves after the first episode of season 4. So be prepared for that and just kind of power through. And get to the next episodes.
Cool.
But other than that, no, this is fantastic. Benedict Cumberbatch is a fantastic representation of Sherlock. Being in modern day is just nuanced and interesting. Seeing Sherlock interact with modern technology and operate just as well, if not better, than he did back when he was in Victorian times. On Netflix, you also have the benefit of seeing the special, the Christmas special, I think it was, they have on there where you can see them in Victorian times.
Oh, I forgot about that episode.
Yep. So that one is between seasons 3 and 4, I think, maybe. I don't know, but it's definitely listed on there, so you get to watch that. It's an hour-long thing, or hour and a half, basically a movie. That one's pretty good. It's not one of the stronger things. It definitely peaked in season 2.
That's how I always felt about the show.
Yeah, it's kind of like, but the thing is, though, you say that to people and they're like, well, then I'll just watch season 2 and be done. Well, no, if I'm comparing everything else to season 2, it's not as good. But if I compare the show at large to most television, it's still much better.
Yes.
So
completely. I love the way you phrased that.
Yeah. So it's definitely worth the time. What's his name? Watson, that actor. Martin Freeman is very understated and yet very good in the role. He doesn't have as many grand gestures and things to do as Benedict Sherlock does, but he definitely holds his own water. Next to such a wild personality, he has to kind of be the steadying presence, and he does a fantastic job. I don't think you have gotten to it yet, but there's an episode with a wedding. That is one of my favorite episodes of the show.
Is that not season 3?
I think that is season 3.
Yeah.
But that is one of my favorite episodes. Moriarty.
That's where there's a murder at the wedding, but there's no murder weapon, and Sherlock has to figure out how the murder was done.
It's a coming murder, yes, but yeah, there's no perceived murder weapon, and they don't know. It's a delayed murder is the thing.
That's right. Yeah,
it's a delayed murder.
Yeah,
and I'm
trying to dance around the spoiler because I remember how it ends. I just don't remember how they. Yeah, I remember it all now.
But
yeah,
I think I
love that episode too.
Really loved the version of Moriarty in Sherlock Holmes' Game of Shadows, the Robert Downey Jr. Sequel. I loved that Moriarty. That was a fantastic performance.
It was a good Moriarty.
But I think this Moriarty wins. I think this is the best one. It
easily wins.
He's so good, and I want more of his performance, and unfortunately, we're not going to get more. His Moriarty has his arc, and the show has moved on. But it's just such good television when he's on screen, and his performance is so good. So if nothing else, if anyone has any passing interest in Sherlock, yes, absolutely watch the Sherlock BBC show. It's on Netflix. Give it a click. You won't regret it. So, but that, unless you have anything else you want to add, we can move on to my show.
No, let's go on to your show. I've never seen your show before, so this is going to be you, all you, sir.
Well, this one is mostly my wife. I did not click on this show. I didn't even know the show existed until about a year or year and a half ago, maybe. My wife started watching this show called Outlander. It was initially on Netflix, and then she watched all the episodes that were on Netflix, and then she ended up having to piecemeal episodes through... Stars is the channel that it is hosted through. So she's had to like find ways to watch it through the network. And so, because, you know, once a show gets on cable television instead of streaming, and our lives are all streaming, we don't watch TV anymore. So trying to find episodes that are on Stars is real hard. I know you can buy the Stars extension on Hulu, but that's garbage. I don't want to do that. That's stupid. So it's been a struggle, but she's been doing it, and it's not necessarily a show that I would be into on the surface, because Outlander is based on a series of books that you could argue are erotic novels. And there is a level to the show that is erotic. It's between the two main characters. Jamie is the male character, and the woman is Claire. It's about the woman Claire, who's in, it's not modern day England. I think it's like the 1940s or 50s, 1945. She's a nurse, a combat nurse, and she, through a event, ends up being pushed back in time and ends up in 1743 in Scotland. And she meets Jamie Fraser and ends up falling in love over time. And it's this big, basically epic story of this woman out of time, kind of Captain America in reverse, in more extreme circumstances, learning how to adapt in a old world, and how her modern sensibilities might affect that old world. And she does have, obviously, knowledge of the future, and this does affect things like she knows certain herbs and stuff that will heal people, so she ends up becoming an important figure amongst Jamie and others. She's there for a Scottish rebellion. There's a lot of history involved. There's a Scottish rebellion of the Jacobites, I think, who end up trying to fight England and lose. She knows about that revolution, and that's a big arc in one of the seasons. As I mentioned before, it is based off of an erotic property, so there are elements of that. Like the sex scenes are intense. While you and I have watched a lot of movies and a lot of TV, so we've seen a lot of sex scenes. It's just safe to say. This doesn't graduate into like pornography or anything by any means. But it definitely has more time spent on the sex scenes and on the inherent eroticism of them. You know, like the foreplay is more drawn out. The camera has more creativity to how things are shot. It's definitely slated towards people towards women or men who would like the idea of having a rugged Scottish man warrior from 1743 to sort of take them in the bedroom. That is definitely a aspect of it. But to boil the whole show down to just that would do it a disservice, in my opinion, because there are a lot of interesting characters that are outside of the bedroom. There's a lot of actors in here that don't necessarily get a lot of shine in Hollywood that I think deserve some more work than they're necessarily getting. Graham McTavish is in here as Dougal Mackenzie just off the bat. He is Dwalin in The Hobbit, the big dwarf with the hairy forearms.
Oh, sure.
He's an actor that pops up every now and then, and I always enjoy him when he's in a property, and I don't think he gets enough work. He is the voice of Dracula in the Castlevania anime, and that was a weirdly inspired choice. It worked very well, because I think he's a good actor. So I recommend Outlander if it sounds at all interesting to you. It has a lot of historical, I wouldn't necessarily say accuracies, because this isn't based on a real historical event outside of the events that do occur, like the Jacobite rebellion and stuff. But it has a lot of stuff that would satisfy a history buff, a history nerd, and whatnot. Right. So I recommend the Outlander show if you can catch it. A lot of it's on Netflix, so it's definitely worth checking out at least what's on Netflix. But other than that, you and I don't have any avoids. So we could move on if we wanted to. Is there anything you want to say that caught your attention about what I said about Outlander, or do you want to move on?
No, absolutely not. I've never seen Outlander, but you did a good job of selling it. It sounds interesting to me. There's so many shows out there to watch. I don't know if I'll watch it soon, but you did a good job of describing it, because I never really heard a whole lot about Outlander before. But speaking of things I've never really heard a whole lot of before, we've got some podcasts that we may want to recommend.
Yep. So this is a reoccurring segment on the podcast. It's really short, but we like to take a chance to grab a podcast from the indie community that we are a part of and give them a moment to shine on this podcast. So we are a film-based podcast, and we appreciate you guys listening to us and sticking around and keeping us in your regular regiment. But there are a lot of different podcasts out there based on a lot of different things. There's podcasts that are whole sci-fi stories where this guy reads from a journal that he is creatively writing and posing as the reread of a journal from someone who explored space. You know, it's got the sound effects and the music, and it's a whole sci-fi thing. It's incredible. There's a lot of different podcasts out there. You honestly, if you think of a version of a podcast out there, someone's done it, and someone has done something else even. So if you guys think that anything sounds interesting that you haven't quite heard of, we like to expand your horizons. So give us just a few seconds of your time to listen to this promo from this podcast, and we'll be back at you with our reports.
Are you a podcast fan and you're looking for a new audio drama to get into? Check out A Journey Beyond the Skies. A Journey Beyond the Skies is a sci-fi series told through the narrated journal entries of Declan Wolfe. Join Declan as he embarks on a journey that will take him everywhere from a cyberpunk city through dangerous wastelands and even beyond Earth itself. There's even a Patreon page featuring expansive bonus content like pages from Declan's own journal, which include his notes and sketches about the world around him. The podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and most other podcast platforms. For more information, visit JourneyBeyondTheSkies.com.
All right, welcome back. We hope that sounded interesting to you. That brings us to our report section, where we take what, in theory, would have been an assignment from the previous week and report on it the next week. But as you heard from the top of the episode, it's been a while, but we still watched the movies we got assigned last episode proper. So just to recap, I got assigned Bohemian Rhapsody, the Queen story, and Logan got assigned The Judge, a Robert Downey Jr., Robert Duvall powerhouse acting piece, basically. So I think we spent a lot of time on my Outlander show, so we're going to jump over to Logan and see what he thought of The Judge, and I'm going to judge his opinion of The Judge. So what did you think of The Judge?
All right, so high-level overview. I enjoyed The Judge a lot. I thought this was a well-done movie with a big heart at the center of it. It is very much an emotional drama. It is all about a small group of people and their emotions and their relationships. It is centered on the Palmer family, and you've got Robert Duvall playing the alpha, the daddy, I guess, of this family.
Daddy Duvall.
He's playing the judge, Judge Joseph Palmer. You've got Robert Downey Jr. in here playing one of the sons, Hank Palmer. He's the lead of the movie. You've got two brothers. You've got Jeremy Strong playing Dale Palmer and Vincent D'Onofrio playing Glenn Palmer. And their chemistry together is really, really good. It's really electric when you see Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall on screen in particular. They're the two performances that when they're on screen together, everything else in the movie just kind of sings and sparkles. I'm trying to think. Robert Downey Jr.'s performance here is one of his better ones. Do you think this is his best one, John, or do you have? Because other than there's this and there's any Iron Man performance, really. Anything else stand out in his career?
So the big performances that I give, so the Iron Man arc overall is definitely a spectacle to behold, because to this point in history, it is the longest character arc in the history of film. That's the Iron Man arc. It's interesting. And I give Robert Downey Jr. a lot of credit for that. I wouldn't say it's necessarily his best performance, though, until you get to the latter years of the Iron Man character, except for Iron Man 1, which was very good. The Judge is very good. I have a really hard time squaring his other performances, though, when comparing, like, best. Because he is in a movie called Chaplin in the 90s, I think. It was either the 90s or the 80s, where he plays Charlie Chaplin. And it is a somewhat strange film and a somewhat strange performance, but it also is super different. It's not what you're used to seeing from Robert Downey Jr., and it works. He plays Chaplin very well in that film, so I would almost lean to saying that that's his best performance. I loved him in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I do not like Shane Black as a director, but I will acknowledge that Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was a fun electric film, and Robert Downey Jr. was fun electric in it. So yeah, long story short, I honestly don't know. I agree it is one of his better performances, but I also see a lot of Robert Downey isms in the performance as well that he brings from a lot of other performances at the same time. So I think it's difficult for him to detach himself from the role, and I think that kind of makes the role suffer a little bit. Not a whole lot, but a little bit.
I think that's completely fair, because I think his character in The Judge reminded me a lot of his Iron Man 2 character with Tony Stark. Yeah. Just that particular stage of daddy issues. Does he love me? Does he hate me? Does he love me? Does he hate me? But I still, I very much enjoyed this movie. I was very surprised once I got to the end of it to feel the way that I felt and to have had the experience that I had. And
this movie fucking hits me. Man, I don't know about this. I don't know what it is about this movie, but man, it fucking gets me.
Yeah, and I definitely think you had a much stronger reaction to it than I did. I walked away giving it a 7 out of 10. The major hangups for me, I think there were a couple of what's the best way to say this? I think that there are several scenes that just felt weighed down by tracking shots that kind of hung around for a little bit too long.
Interesting.
Several scenes where like you have a big argument and a big conversation, and then you literally just sit there and watch Robert Downey Jr. like stare at the floor for 2 minutes straight before it like cuts on to the next scene. And I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but there were some scenes where I was really like ready for the editing to pick up and for the pacing to pick up with some of that, but it didn't.
I've heard the pacing thing before, and I agree. There are some scenes that, if nothing else, simply saying do kind of drag on a bit too much. I think it definitely could have been tightened in some areas.
Sure, and that's, to be fair, like that's also the same. I would say the same thing about Breaking Bad. Like rewatching Breaking Bad recently, there are a lot of scenes where you're just watching Walt sit there and do nothing for like 2 minutes, but that's just kind of the tone and the pacing of the show. It's kind of going at its own speed. But The Judge also, like, for the moments where it's a little bit slow and a little bit dull, like there are a lot of really loud, chaotic moments. Like I don't think there's a conversation in this movie that doesn't at some point turn into a shouting match. It is a very emotionally charged movie. A lot of angry people who are just kind of letting their shit out on each other. There's so many like back and forth kind of relationships in this movie. Do you have one or two relationships in particular, John, that stood out to you? Because I know who my two favorite are, but I want to ask you because you're the big fan.
I mean, you can't really get around not putting the father and son relationship on that list.
Sure, of course.
Like Robert Duvall and Robert Downey Jr. obviously do take the cake in this film. I mean, holy shit, the fucking court scenes between Robert Downey Jr. and Duvall when Duvall is up on the bench, on the seat, I should say, and he's being cross-examined by Robert Downey.
Right.
Oh my god, like that fucking scene. Robert Duvall, I don't care how old that man gets, he is a fucking actor. Like, he will kill you if he wants to in his performance. Not to take anything away from Robert Downey as well in those scenes. I am tempted to say that I enjoyed Robert Downey and his love interest in the small town. I cannot remember her name.
That was Vera Farmiga.
Yeah, Vera Farmiga. She is a very underrated, understated actress. She pops up in a few things here and there that I see, and she always does a great job.
Conjuring, Up in the Air, The Departed.
Yeah, and she is just, she's just, I think I certainly underestimate how gorgeous she is, and when I watch The Judge, I'm always struck by the fact, I'm like, man, she is just she's just a different kind of pretty in this movie, and not to take away from her performance because she does a great acting job. She just also has a great screen presence. But I think my second favorite relationship, for however little screen time it gets, I think Robert Downey Jr. and Jeremy Strong as Dale, their special needs brother. Robert Downey Jr. and when Dale interact, it's always hilarious and bittersweet at the same time. Because for however fiery Hank Palmer always gets and is, anytime Dale is around, that fire just kind of flips out and he just is completely understanding, completely level. You know, it's obvious that the work was put in to be sure that history between a brother who is special needs and the fiery brother was built. Like maybe when they were kids it was frustrating, but now he knows how to deal with Dale. He knows how to work with him. The scene when they're in the hospital and he gives Dale his wallet to go buy something from the vending machine, and Dale goes, "There's a naked lady in here," and without missing a beat, Robert Downey just goes, "Yeah, it's a fun wallet." It's just, I don't know.
A good line.
That relationship doesn't get a lot of screen time, but I really liked it. So I'd say Hank and Dale and the dad and Hank are the two best relationships. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the father-son relationship there is really, really great. I would probably go with his relationship with Vera Farmiga. I think that they're back and forth and just kind of, you kind of get the sense that she is really somehow the one thing that he never was really able to get, if that makes sense. Other than his dad's approval, he was never really able to find that romantic happiness with her that he wanted when he was younger. And so they have this really unusual relationship, I would say, and I very much enjoyed seeing it play out on screen. I'm trying to think what I don't even know where to go next with the next question because I'm completely blanking. I had another question lined up and I'm so blanking. Help me out.
One of the things that does damage this film, in my opinion, and what's funny is that I would give this film probably overall an 8 out of 10, even though I am very high on it. I get that a lot of my opinion of it is emotional response. When it comes to an objective standpoint, it definitely is around that 8 to 7 out of 10. And one of the big reasons, in my opinion, is the absolute waste of Billy Bob Thornton.
Thank you for bringing this up. Thank you.
That Billy Bob has nothing to do in this movie. He is just absolutely flat, and that is not his fault. This movie just left him hanging.
I completely agree. When he shows up in the movie, I almost got goosebumps and chills because I was like, "Oh, Billy Bob Thornton is gonna shred shit." Ugh.
Yeah, could you imagine Robert Downey and Billy Bob fucking like sparring in the court and just going back and forth as these two elite lawyers? And nope, Billy Bob's got nothing.
They have one scene that I would say they've got one scene in the whole movie that has that brutally intense energy, but it's in a private setting behind closed doors. It's just the two of them in the room, and even then they still keep their voices calm, and neither one of them really speaks above a whisper. So it never really gives you that satisfying, like, in the courtroom yelling or screaming or anything like that. And I wanted that from Billy Bob Thornton because he's got that gear, that switch, and I would have loved to have seen him turn that on against Robert Downey Jr., but who knows? Maybe there's another movie one day down the road where we could see these two go up at it against each other. Maybe you get Billy Bob Thornton to be the villain in Sherlock Holmes 3 if they ever get around to making that.
Yeah, that's coming at some point. I'm gonna be fucking mad. What did you think of Dax Shepard?
I was surprised to see him play such a doofy good old boy in this movie because I'm used to seeing him in Parenthood. And in Parenthood, he's kind of the more like rock and roll, sexy hippie kind of character. So it was funny for me to see him play someone so unconfident when I'm used to seeing him play someone who's so like just lighthearted. But I dug his performance. Yeah. I thought he was pretty decent in this movie. That does. Okay. I like okay. What's the best way to ask this? How do you feel about the joke and or potential insinuation about his fatherhood of a side character? I'm trying to non-spoilery
of Leighton Meester.
I'm trying to like not spoiler the.
I mean, it's been out since 2014.
Fair. What did you think about the moment where Leighton Meester gets in the car and you realize that he made out with Vera Farmiga's daughter and she starts flirting with him and biting her hair? Like, what did you think about that scene? Did that work for you? Does that like really creep you out?
That is weird because when I think about it on an objective level, I'm not exactly sure what the film was trying to do.
Same.
I don't know if it wanted me to laugh or if it wanted me to cringe, or I think it wanted me to laugh. I think it really was more of a joke, especially when you think of it in the context of how Robert Downey takes it. So there's 2 points in the film where I think it clarifies it as a joke. One of them being when he's saying goodbye to his daughter at the airport, and she puts her hair through her mouth just like Leighton Meester did in the car, and it makes him think, oh shit, hang on. And so that moment I think is meant for laughs, and then he goes to
It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, he goes to the garage. Well, it kind of isn't in a way. He goes to the garage and then he goes to his yearbook, and that would have been the year that he had last seen Samantha, his girlfriend. And he does the math of how old the girl is, and he's counting the months, and then his reaction of counting, and he's just like, fuck.
Yep.
And like how his brain is clicking. Again, a humorous performance meant for chuckles. So I think it's meant for laughs. But given the context of how the daughter ended up being born of Samantha and how she ended up having the kid.
The actual dad.
And who, the context of who and why. It's not super funny.
Right.
So I think that might have thrown some of the critics as well, because it's kind of a tone issue in the middle of the film. Sort of this through line in the film that is like kind of fucking with the threads of tone. I get past it and I ignore it, but for the most part, I get how it would bother some people.
Yeah, that was kind of the one joke in the movie that I was kind of having a hard time wrestling with. It kind of reminded me of Crazy Stupid Love, how there's the little boy has a crush on his babysitter who has a crush on his dad theme.
Oh, yeah.
That, like, everything else in the movie's great, but that one theme just, I don't know, something just doesn't settle. That's kind of where I'm at with The Judge. Like, I think everything else around it is great. I'm still not sure how I feel about that one particular, I guess, joke or relationship, but it made me laugh. I don't know if that's good or bad of me, but It made me laugh a lot. Yeah, so I guess all that to say, like, my general thoughts, I'm somewhere, like, I wrote 7 down. You could easily hear me make an argument for an 8 out of 10. I thought The Judge was really, really good. Part of me is trying to figure out why it didn't get a better reception, because there are some courtroom arguments in here that, like, might be just as good as something you see in A Few Good Men, which is another incredibly well-respected courtroom drama movie. So I had a really good experience watching this movie. Perhaps it's on the more emotionally dramatic, cliched, predictable side of things. But at the same time, there's a few twists and turns that genuinely kept me fresh throughout the movie and surprised and a little bit unsure of where the movie was going to end. And I did not honestly think the movie was going to go where it went once you got to the end. It genuinely did go somewhere that I did not expect it to at the end. So I'll watch this a few more times. For now, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10. But very much glad that you showed this one to me. I feel like this could be one of those hidden gem movies that after a few viewings, I'm either going to find myself saying, you know what, I get it, 5 out of 10, or I'm going to say, why the hell are more people not talking about this? So I'm excited that I've been introduced to this movie.
Cool. I am really glad you liked it because, I also don't understand the weird hate that the film got when it came out from critics. And I'm not super exaggerating. Some critics were really harsh on it, so I don't get it either. But that's what I've got on The Judge. I like it. I'm glad you like it too. So do you want to move on to my assignment?
No, let's just end the show right here and never talk to each other again.
Damn it. I knew this was coming. No, you must stay. I watched this movie and you have to hear about it.
What did you watch this past, I guess, 3 weeks now, John?
You've seen it. right? You've seen this movie before?
Yes,
Okay.
once in theaters.
Okay, so it's Bohemian Rhapsody. It's the Queen story. This is supposed to be the supposedly the definitive biopic about Queen, the legendary band. It's directed by Bryan Singer, which is kind of actually weirdly confusing to me because this did not feel like a Bryan Singer film in many ways. I'm not a super big fan of Bryan Singer, to be totally honest, but, you know, whatever.
Didn't he get fired, like, towards the end of this movie? He didn't finish it, right?
I don't think he finished it. I think it got completed by who is directing the Bond movie now. No Time to Die is the new Bond movie. It's directed by... Never mind. Who is directing it? I can't remember. I don't think Bryan Singer finished it.
Did he go on to do Rocket Man? Is it the same director who made both movies?
Oh, I think you're right. I think I was confusing Rocket Man and No Time to Die for some real weird fucking reason. It may be Rocket Man we're also confusing with Bohemian Rhapsody. I don't know. If anyone knows the answer to this weird enigma that just popped up on the podcast, let us know in the comments below. Dexter Fletcher is the director of Rocket Man. I'm not sure if we're just conflating the two movies or not, but either way, Bohemian Rhapsody, the first half of this movie, it's 2 hours and 14 minutes long. The first half of this movie, I did not really enjoy. The first half of this movie, it moves along at a blinding pace, and it wants to get the origin, honestly, weirdly enough, it wants to get the origin story of Queen out of the way. It wants to just not bother and move on and have Queen established and just tell the story, tell the middle story instead. It doesn't really spend a whole lot of time. You get, I think it's literally a total of 3 scenes between Freddie and his family. And that's kind of a shame because Freddie and his family were very much at odds. He was not born in London. He was born, I think they fled India, I believe, but they were not native to India. And they were very conservative, very traditionalist family. They wanted Freddie to be a much more down-to-earth person than he was, but he was, obviously, we all know Freddie Mercury. He was much more flamboyant, much more of a performer. So there was a lot of conflict between him and his family, specifically him and his father. You get 2 scenes, I think, of just showing general tension between Freddie and his dad, and then the third scene just kind of shows general acceptance at the end. And that's about it. And that's pretty much this whole film. Pretty much every relationship that Freddie had in his life is boiled down to like a few scenes where you get the stages of their relationship, especially between him and who Freddie said was his love of his life, played by Lucy Boynton. Mary Austin was a woman in Freddie's life that they were engaged at one point, and then they became estranged. And then they were pretty much just lifelong, very close friends from then on. You get like the whirlwind of them getting together and being romantic, and then it kind of just shears off, and then they don't talk to each other, and then they're kind of friends, not friends, then they're really close at the end of the movie. It's just like, okay, I'm not sure exactly how I'm supposed to be feeling here. This film is confusing. It's more of the Freddie Mercury story rather than the actual story of Queen. It doesn't feel like it's focused on the band all that much. Even though it's supposed to literally be about the band and the band gets a lot of screen time, I couldn't tell you any of the band members' names, honestly. And at one point, one of them says, some time has passed, but none of the band members except for Freddie look like they've aged at all. None of them look like they age at all throughout this entire film. And maybe that's true to real life. I don't know. But at one point, the drummer mentions that he's got a wife and kids. And I'm like, I'm sorry, fucking what? When? When did you meet a woman that you dated, then settled down with, then married, then had children with? When did this fucking happen? And we're just there already. And we just kind of move past it as though it's just an inevitability of life. And I'm like, okay. And then there's this whole stint where we're with Freddie when Queen had their like middle ground breakup. And he is instead trying to have a solo career, and it kind of just goes by real fast. It's a matter of several years that he's just off trying to make these 2 solo albums, and he's going out down this spiral of drugs and sex and parties, and that's around the time where he gets diagnosed with AIDS. And Paul Prenter was his like manager / handler / lover. And this film, even the band members admit, villainizes him to the point where like he is pretty much the villain of the movie. And in real life, he wasn't really a villain. He was just a guy. Like, he may have fucked up and done some bad things, who knows? But whether or not he was an actual literal villain, this film kind of just makes some assumptions about his motivations. And he died in 1991, so he didn't even get to defend himself from this movie and tell his side of the story. This film even outright kind of character assassinates him. Whenever Freddy and him break up in the movie, he proceeds to have a TV interview where he outs Freddy for being what they say gay, but he was actually a bi. That didn't happen in real life. Yes, he did have an interview with a magazine, I think, but it wasn't a TV interview like broadcasted around the world or anything like that. This film just outright tries to make it seem like he's trying to destroy Freddy for breaking up with him, and that wasn't really exactly what happened per se. All that to say about the movie, Rami Malek, holy shit. Like, that... Rami Malek was in an entirely different movie, and not necessarily to say that he was not playing Freddie Mercury. He was. Where I said in the Steve Jobs movie with...
Michael Fassbender?
Michael Fassbender, yeah. Michael Fassbender wasn't necessarily playing Steve Jobs by studying Steve Jobs and then portraying him. He was just playing what he felt Steve Jobs was as an essence.
Right.
And there were points in that film where I forgot I was looking at his face. I thought for like literal moments I was like, there's Steve Jobs. Like I wasn't like, that's not hyperbole. Like for a second I was like, whoa. The same thing happened here where Rami Malek just did such a fantastic pitch job portraying Freddie Mercury that, man, he deserved a better film around him. Like, this performance I think is gonna go down as one of his absolute best. And I don't know, it's insane the work that he definitely put in to play this character and to portray him. The Live Aid performance at the end of the film is the best part of the entire movie by far. And you could just see in Raimi's performance there that it's pretty much Freddie Mercury on stage. Like, it felt like it for a hot little bit, like that I was watching Freddie Mercury in the movie portraying himself in his own biopic. And when it comes to Rami Malek's performance, 10 out of 10. When it comes to the movie, 6 out of 10.
Okay, that's actually super fair. I feel like I completely endorse everything you just said. So I'm not even going to try to repeat all of it. I agree with you. His performance is way better than the movie. And the movie itself is more on the disappointing side. I think I gave this closer to a 4, maybe a 5 out of 10. Let me look it up on Letterboxd and see. But
I give it a 6 or a 5 because it's not by any means like a horrible movie, but it's definitely just the generic biopic. It's what when you hear they're making a biopic of Queen, you're either going to expect it to be horrible, or fantastic. And it's really in the territory.
I gave it a 5 out of 10.
Yeah. So I could see that. And I've heard that one of the reasons why it ended up being kind of a bleh movie is because the real life band sort of pushed back on some of the more, what would you call it? Not scathing, but more real observance of the history. The film tried to be, from what I understand from the writers at least, tried to be a little more honest about the actual history. But because Queen is still a touring and still a, economically viable title and band, they don't really want to release a film that may cast them in not the best lights, because, life is messy and sometimes you do shitty things. And I don't think the band wanted a lot of those shittier things per se to be put into a film that was going to be seen by the entire world. So they pushed back on some of the more real stuff, which is kind of unfair because there is a little bit of analysis of Freddie Mercury in here that's pretty damn harsh, in my opinion. I think that he was just a lost soul, and this film kind of shits on some of the decisions that Freddie made in his life a little too hard. And I think that, again, it's another case of he's passed and can't defend himself, but the band tries to make themselves look better. And I kind of don't like the movie for that. Maybe I'm reading into it a little too much, but that's just what I've read in regards to the production. Overall, though, Rami Malek, you are a fucking legend and fantastic job. I'm sorry the film didn't do you honor, but like, goddamn, you did Freddie Mercury honor, that's for sure.
Yeah, this movie just baffles me why people loved it so much, why it got so much attention during award season. There were many things about this that bothered me, but his performance did not. There was something about his performance that was just uniquely transparent. I just very much appreciated the emotional vulnerability, at least, that he put forth in that role. So it's absolutely worth watching for that. But you and I have a very, very similar opinion of this movie. Like, very similar opinion.
I'm not shocked, to be honest.
So thank you for checking it out.
Yeah, I did enjoy it. Once I got past the halfway mark, I pretty much stopped any extracurricular stuff that I was doing and watched. Not to say I wasn't paying attention to the first half, because I was. Like, if I'm gonna review a movie, I'm gonna watch it. But it definitely ceased any possibility of extracurricular work once I got past the halfway mark. So take that as you will, whether or not you want to check out this movie. If you're a big Queen fan and you really know the history of the band, honestly, this movie probably pissed you off more than it pissed me off, because you're gonna know where they scathed and jumped over shit. So I don't know, take that with a grain of salt. But otherwise, that brings us to our assignments, where we do this again. We assign each other movies that we're gonna report on next week, much like we did just now. So, Logan, what is it that I'm going to watch this time around and going to be talking about for far too long next week?
All right, so I am going to throw you a movie that I have never seen before, and that is 1988 Grave of the Fireflies. This is a Studio Ghibli movie that I have not seen, but I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I know that you really dig these movies, and so I was kind of thinking maybe you could give this one a look-see and let me know if it's worth my time, because there's so many movies to watch these days that something like this, I really don't know if I'm going to be the right audience for it. So I saw that it was on your list. I believe it was something you and Annabelle both want to watch. So I figured that would make a really good date night for you guys over the next week. And what a newlywed married couple does not need a good date night. So your assignment is Grave of the Fireflies.
Well, awesome. I am ready to watch that because I love Studio Ghibli, and yeah, Annabelle really wanted to see this. It's about World War. It's based in the time period of World War II.
Oh, cool.
And so it'll be interesting. It's during the time where America is dropping incendiary bombs on Japan, and I don't know much else about the story other than that. So I'm curious to see it. So cool. I'll give that a check out and report back on it. So you are going to, honestly, wow, weird actually. I just realized this connection. Your film's also in Japan.
Oh, interesting.
Yours is The Wolverine.
Nice.
Not Wolverine Origins and not Logan. Logan is fantastic and the best by far, but The Wolverine is honestly the perfect movie to have in between. It is not Wolverine Origins that is positively ghastly, and it is not Logan, which is, positively wonderful. It is the perfect middle child. It does have some pacing issues. The very end of the movie is definitely comic book, like 100%, and not necessarily in the best way. But I think everything before that, the beginning, middle, and right before the end, is a very good Wolverine movie. I think this is why this director, I think his name's Mangold.
Yeah, James Mangold. He directed Lucas.
He is the guy who directed Logan.
Logan.
I mean Logan.
Yeah, Lucas is my brother's name.
It's your own name, man.
He directed Logan.
Yeah, this movie is why he got Logan. And so I think that you'll see that through line for sure. And I think that it's very good. It's very competent. And the beginning of this movie, there is a scene in a bar between Logan and some people in the bar that I think is a highlight of his performance overall as Wolverine. I think it's one of the better moments. It's not very long, but it's just a moment that I really like. So I'm curious to know what you think of this. Did you ever see Wolverine Origins?
Oh, of course. That came out the year I was a freshman in high school, so yeah, I saw the crap out of that movie. It was also one of those movies before streaming. It was on FX a lot, and so I could just record it on this device that they used to call a DVR. and then I could just fast forward through the commercials and watch the movie for free as much as I want.
Old school.
I watched it a lot back then, but I never saw the Wolverine. For some reason, it just completely slipped by.
Well,
me.
I'm not going to allow that to happen any longer. Consider this a palate cleanse from Wolverine Origins. Just forget that movie exists and consider this to be the first Wolverine movie, and then Logan is the completion.
Let me ask you one thing here. You mentioned the director's name. Are you super familiar with this director, James Mangold?
I know I've seen other things that he's done.
Because I feel like this is someone that should be a friend of the show. He's done Ford versus Ferrari.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
He's done Logan. He directed The Wolverine. He directed Night and Day with Tom Cruise.
Never saw that.
3:10 to Yuma with Christian Bale.
Love that. That's a good movie. That's a good Western.
Walk the Line, Joaquin Phoenix.
Oh, yep. My favorite music biopic.
Yep. And then says he's a screenwriter on Oliver and Company. Yeah, the animated Oliver and Company. He was a screenwriter on that.
He goes far back into my childhood.
He does. He also did a movie in 2003 called Identity, which I've seen, but I don't know if most people have.
That sounds familiar, but I don't know if I've seen it for sure.
Ray Liotta, John Hawkes. But yeah, anyway, super, super good director. So I'll check The Wolverine out just because I want to check out more James Mangold movies.
Cool. Yep, I think he is a weirdly understated talent. He definitely doesn't get the attention he deserves for how long he's been in the industry. But yeah, so you've got The Wolverine. I've got Grave of the Fireflies by Studio Ghibli. And that is what we'll report on next week. If you want to be here when it comes out, be sure you follow or subscribe wherever you are.
Subscribe!
So if you're on YouTube, lock in that subscribe and that like, if you would be so kind. Likes are super good. They're pretty much the fodder of YouTube. And if you want to be notified when we come out with stuff, hit the bell. That's pretty much the alert system for YouTube. If you're on the other platforms, such as SoundCloud, where we're hosted, give us a follow. Spotify or iTunes. Follow us so that we're always in your library if you want to keep up with us. Otherwise, thank you for listening. You can find us on social media if you want to interact with us. I am on Twitter. Logan's also on Twitter. The links are down below, as well as our Facebook and the ability to email us if you want to send us a more long-form intimate letter. Please don't make it too intimate, though. We're not into that. We're both taken. I'm sorry. But other than that, we are glad you guys are here. We appreciate your time, and we are going to sign out for now. So, Logan, let's say goodbye.
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 Bye. Have fun storming the castle.
It'll take a miracle.